same interview, Dennis further described Wilson. "We called her Slats Wilson, who was a big tall nurse, about 6'2" or 3, big tall skinny gal, and we called her Slats. Everybody called her Slats. She's the one who told me she heard there was a plane crash and the nurses went down on a training mission." The testimony appeared to clearly identify by name, rank, position, physical attributes, and by a distinctive nickname, Slats, another nurse present at the hospital in July 1947. But a review of the morning reports of the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital for July 1947 did not contain the name of a nurse or anyone else named Wilson. The only female captain assigned to the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital in July 1947 was the chief nurse, Captain Joyce Goddard. Goddard, who was 5 feet 6 inches tall, was transferred from Roswell Army Airfield to Korea on August 21, 1947. Therefore, according to Dennis's recollection of events, this review of the morning reports indicated that there were 2 missing nurses, not one, Lieutenant Naomi Self and Captain Slats Wilson. Further scrutiny of personnel records of individuals assigned to the Roswell Army Airfield Walker Air Force Base Hospital indicated that Dennis's recollections of events were apparently inaccurate. Examination of the August 1947 morning reports did not list a nurse named Wilson, but they did list a nurse named Slattery. Captain Lucille C. Slattery, who retired as a lieutenant colonel and is now deceased, was reassigned from Fort George Wright, Washington, to Roswell Army Airfield on August 7, 1947. Slattery replaced Goddard as the chief nurse and was the only female captain assigned to the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital. Interviews of persons with longtime professional and personal associations with Slattery revealed that she was known by the unusual nickname of Slats. Additionally, former associates of Slattery interviewed for this report recalled that she was the only Air Force nurse that had ever been known as Slats. Persons interviewed were Air Force nurses who retired in the 1960s, each with more than 20 years of service, including retired Air Force Colonel Ethel Kovach Scott, who served as chief nurse of the Air Force from 1963 to 1965. Upon review of Slattery's personnel file, it was learned that she was only 5 feet 3 inches tall and therefore was most likely not the 6 foot 2 inches or 6 foot 3 inches tall skinny nurse described. This discrepancy in physical description and the fact that she did not arrive at Roswell Army Airfield until nearly 1 month after Dennis claims he spoke to her led to some other tall, thin nurse, possibly named Wilson, who was stationed at the Roswell Army Airfield or Walker Air Force Base Hospital at some other time. Consequently, a comprehensive review of the morning reports and rosters of the Roswell Army Airfield Walker Air Force Base Hospital revealed that only one nurse named Wilson had ever served there, and she did not arrive until February 1956. Footnote. Records were also searched for names similar to Wilson. 3 nurses stationed at Roswell Army Airfield Walker Air Force Base were identified: Martha Wassam, Carol Williams, and Chalma Walker. None of these nurses' physical descriptions or personal professional circumstances were similar to the descriptions of Captain Wilson described by the witness. End of footnote. Captain Ida Bell Miller, who became Major Ida Bell Wilson in 1958 due to marriage and a promotion, was assigned to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital from February 1956 until May 1960. Upon review of Major Wilson's personnel file, it was learned that she was 5 foot 9 inches tall and thin. Also, she served as the head nurse of the surgical ward at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. Therefore, Wilson's physical attributes, tall and thin, and position as head nurse matched Dennis's recollections of Captain Wilson. When contacted by Air Force researchers, Wilson stated she had no recollection of Dennis, of ever having conversations with him, any of the events he described, or of a nurse that was missing. She also made it abundantly clear that as an Air Force officer and medical professional, she would not spread a rumor of a plane crash, as Dennis alleged Captain Wilson did in conversations with him. Results of missing nurse and pediatrician research. Examination of the missing nurse and the pediatrician stories and other facts established by research provide a foundation for further analysis to determine what actual events, if any, were responsible for these claims. Based on information developed, it appears this witness may be mistaken in some of his statements, especially regarding the time frame of these events. The following facts have been established. A. The only physician who ever relocated to Farmington, New Mexico following his military service at Roswell Army Airfield, Walker Air Force Base, was the former Chief of Pediatric Services at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital, the former Captain Frank B. Nordstrom. Further, he did not arrive at Walker Air Force Base until June 1951, 4 years after the purported Roswell incident, has no recollection of Dennis, the statements Dennis attributes to him, or of any actual events that explain his account. B. The only nurse ever assigned to Roswell Army Airfield Hospital, subsequently renamed Walker Air Force Base, named Wilson, was Ida Bell Wilson. She served at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital from 1956 until 1960 and had no recollection of ever meeting or speaking with Dennis or any of the activities he described. C. Captain Lucille C. Slattery, the only Air Force nurse ever known by the distinctive nickname Slats, was stationed at the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital. However, she did not arrive until August 7, 1947. This was 1 month after the Roswell incident, making it improbable that Dennis spoke with her in early July 1947. D. There is no record that a nurse named Naomi Maria Self was ever assigned to Roswell Army Airfield, Walker Air Force Base, or was ever a member of the U.S. military. E. All nurses assigned to the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital in July 1947 have been accounted for, thereby eliminating any possibility that there was ever a missing nurse. Since actual Air Force members who served at Roswell Army Airfield, Walker Air Force Base Hospital were described in this account, the next step was to determine if actual events that occurred at the hospital were possibly the source of this story. As stated earlier in this report, a thorough examination of both classified and unclassified records from 1947 revealed no Army Air Forces or U.S. Air Force activities that explained the alleged events. Therefore, records were reviewed from other time periods based on personnel records of individuals believed to have been identified. These persons and the periods when they were assigned to Roswell Army Airfield Walker Air Force Base are listed in Table 2.1. The research profile. With the establishment of a possible time frame, research efforts paralleled the previous examination in Section 1 of this report that determined high-altitude balloons with anthropomorphic dummy payloads were responsible for the reports of aliens at the 2 rural New Mexico crashed saucer locations. A further review of Air Force activities was then made to determine if any were significantly similar to the information provided. Based on the time period established by personnel records and statements contained in the witness's own account, the following profile of possible events was established. An event involving the Walker Air Force Base Hospital that took place between 1947 and 1960. A. That may have resulted in very mangled, black little bodies that had a strong odor being placed in body bags. B. That may have resulted in 2 persons not normally assigned to the hospital, believed to be doctors, that were supposedly doing preliminary autopsies on the little bodies. C. That may have involved a body with a head that was much larger than normal, which was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. D. That may have involved a red-headed captain or a big red-headed colonel. E. That may have resulted in an ambulance parked in the rear of the hospital containing wreckage with inscriptions that were bluish-purplish, which looked kind of like the bottom of a canoe. And F. That may have required a heightened state of security. End of Section 5. Recording by Aaron Bennett. Section 6 of the Roswell Report, Case Closed, by James McAndrew. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Aaron Bennett. The Roswell Report, Case Closed, by James McAndrew. Aircraft Accidents. Section 2.2, Aircraft Accidents. Walker Air Force Base Hospital that may explain reports of bodies was begun by reviewing the most prominent possible source, which were aircraft accidents. Footnote: other possible explanations such as automobile accidents, house fires, etc. were also examined. However, none of these were determined to be responsible for this account of bodies. End of footnote. A review of aircraft accidents from 1947 to 1960 revealed 8 fatal accidents that involved Walker Air Force Base. The following 3 basic criteria were used to narrow research efforts to specific accidents for more detailed examinations. Were the victims burned, resulting in possible descriptions of black little bodies? Were the victims transported to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital? And were the victims autopsied? To facilitate this examination, researchers reviewed official accident reports, organizational and base histories, individual personnel records of victims, and contemporary newspaper accounts of the accidents. Interviews of persons who participated in the aftermath of these accidents were also conducted. As a result, only one accident met the 3 criteria: the June 1956 KC-97 accident. Upon detailed review of records of the 1956 accident and interviews with persons who participated in the recovery and identification of the victims, extensive similarities to the description the witness provided were apparent. Fatal KC-97 aircraft mishap. In 1956, Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, was the home of Strategic Air Command's 6th and 509th Bombardment Wings. Additionally, Walker was home of the 509th Aerial Refueling Squadron, 509th ARS, equipped with the KC-97G aircraft. The accident occurred on June 26, 1956, 8.8 statute miles south of Walker Air Force Base. A KC-97G aircraft with 11 crewmen on board, while on a refueling training mission, experienced a propeller failure 4 1/2 minutes after takeoff. As a result of the propeller failure, a propeller blade was believed to have punctured the deck fuel tank of the fully loaded tanker, causing an intense cabin fire. The aircraft was quickly engulfed in flames, spun out of control, and was completely destroyed. All 11 Air Force members were killed instantly by the fire and impact explosion. Due to the isolated rural impact location on property owned by the state of New Mexico, there was minimal collateral damage and no fatalities or injuries to persons on the ground. The remains of the crew members were recovered from the crash site and transported by members of the 4036th U.S. Air Force Hospital, numerical designation of the hospital at Walker Air Force Base, to the hospital facility at Walker Air Force Base for identification. On the day following the crash, an identification specialist from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, arrived at the hospital to assist in identifying the remains. Partway through the identification process, conducted by both the identification specialist and Air Force members assigned to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital, the identification activities were moved to a refrigerated compartment at the Walker Air Force Base Commissary. This was due to an overpowering odor emitted by the burned and fuel-soaked bodies and the lack of proper storage facilities at the small base hospital. Also on the day following the crash, June 27, 1956, autopsies of 3 of the victims were accomplished by a local Roswell pathologist. These examinations were performed at a local funeral home. Upon completion of the identification procedures and the post-mortem examinations, the remains were shipped to the next of kin for burial. Comparison of the account to the KC-97 mishap. This series of actual events contains extensive similarities to the account provided by Dennis. The numerous and extensive similarities indicate that some elements of this actual event were most probably included in Dennis's account. This aircraft accident provides an explanation for the following